Rob Navarra asks, what are some common mistakes that cybersecurity project managers make? Great question. Reed, I'll let you go first. What are some common mistakes with project managers or specifically cybersecurity project managers?
I would say I'll touch on project managers first and then maybe dive a little bit into the cybersecurity element of it. For project managers, I would say staying on top of your work. So, at least for me, Jason, you mentioned earlier that you broke your time up in the office into different things. That's something I was really consistent about. Whereas everyone knows as soon as I enter the office for the first 20 minutes, I'm going to read my emails. And then for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to make a bulleted list of all the things that I need to do. And so if you don't go through that process, in my experience, if you don't write things out and quite literally cross them off throughout the day, things get missed. And you don't want to miss anything. You don't want to miss an important follow-up email or call. You want to make sure that you're talking to all your vendors on time with the right information. And on top of that, I would also say that just general preparation, if you're going to lead a meeting, you need to make sure that you're coming prepared. So, for example, we had started this 30 minutes beforehand so that we could do our technical run through. You might be able to tell, but Jason and I both have green screens behind us. We get into our little outfits, we get our green screens up, we've got our lighting on. And so just being prepared generally, because that extra 10, 15 minutes, it really pays itself forward. So just be consistent, make sure that you're creating a list of objectives you need to do, break it down into bite-sized pieces, because if you get overwhelmed by large tasks, project management might not be for you.
Yep.
And so I think that for people that look at a problem as itself and don't break it down into constituent elements, that's going to be a problem. So that is probably the biggest error that I would see with most people. Also, not planning ahead. That kind of ties into procrastination. I procrastinate. That's one of my biggest issues as a person. It's something that I've consistently tried to develop over the years. And so I would say the sooner you start planning, the more effective you'll be as a project manager. And then for cybersecurity project managers specifically, making sure that you have enough technical chops to get the job done. Because as Jason had already said, you don't necessarily have to be the most technical person to be a project manager. I don't consider myself a code wizard by any means, but I know how to script. I know how to use Bash and boot up a Linux computer and that kind of thing. But just making sure that you have enough technical proficiency to make sure that you can execute the job. Now, your mileage will vary. I would say that if you're passing your Security Plus, that's probably a really good place to start.
Yeah,
Jason?
I think that's great advice. I'll tell you probably the two biggest things I see with project managers that mess up, and this is in cybersecurity as well as regular, is people who don't have an agenda when it comes to meetings. Meetings are dangerous because they are huge time sucks for you, right? And what I mean by that is if I get 10 people in a room to go talk about this project because I'm the project manager, I'm not the one doing the work. I need to bring in the coders, right? The lead for the coding team. I need to bring in the security team. I need to bring in the authentication team. And I bring in all these people to get this project done. And I'm working with them and we have an hour meeting set. Just because you said you have an hour meeting doesn't mean it needs to take an hour. A lot of times we get scheduled an hour meeting and people take an hour just because there is an hour there on the calendar. Yep. I will tell you one of the things I like to do in meetings, when I do a conference with project managers and with my subordinates, we will do what's called a stand-up meeting. And that can only take 15 minutes instead of taking an hour because everyone wants to say what they need. They want to identify the problems and they want to move on so they can get back to their desk, get some work done and sit back down. And so that helps to speed up the meetings. It's something I learned back working in Scrum as well as something I learned in the military. So that's one of the big things. And if you come to the meeting with an agenda and you send that agenda out ahead of time, your meetings will go faster and people will be better prepared. Some people are extroverts and they can think on the fly. Reed and I are pretty good at thinking on the fly. You're sending questions to us. We haven't seen these yet, and we're answering you right now. I know other people on my team who are brilliant people, but if I ask them a question, they need to go think about it, create the answer, and come back to me. And that's totally fine, but I'm not going to put them in front of a live stream with you guys because they would be sitting here in silence at you. They wouldn't be able to answer the questions. And so if you go to a meeting and you have a bunch of introverts who need time to digest and think about it, you want to send them that ahead of time. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with people. When you're a project manager, you may have 10 or 15 people in that room. Some of them can think on their feet, some can't. So if you send it ahead of time, they'll give you a better product. The other thing I would say is that some project managers think they have to do it all, and they are too afraid to ask for help or to get an assistant assigned to them. If you are on a small project, it's fine. You can do it yourself. But I will tell you, when I was doing that $30 million project, replacing the network on a huge warship, It was a LHC, which is a small aircraft carrier essentially. We have up to 2,000 people on this thing at any one time. We have multiple systems, multiple networks. We can't just have me do everything. I just wouldn't be able to get it done. So I had an assistant who worked with me, and that person was there to help manage my calendar, manage the project, manage the documentation. So I can say, hey, I need you to do this. Go run off and do this while I'm in this meeting. They can run off, get the work done. By the time I'm out of the meeting an hour later, I can give them the notes and they can give me what I needed and we can keep moving. And that helps multiply my time by having other people who can help do a lot of that documentation work. The last thing I would say is in this digital remote world, if you're holding meetings on Zoom because you have a remote team, I do recommend that you make everybody have their camera on. And the reason for this is when people are at their computer, they are so guilty of having you up in the background and listening to you while working on something else and answering their emails. Some people who can multitask can switch between tasks very fast and not lose the thread. Most people, though, can't. And so if I think I can listen to TV and listen to the Zoom and do my emails, I can't. I'm ignoring the Zoom, I'm ignoring the TV, and I'm focusing on the emails. So keep that in mind as well.